You know, there is a setting I can set that just auto joins these people when they come into the meeting. I might enable it. I've done it before. Okay, I'm about to start. Good afternoon, everyone. Depending on where you are in the country, it's afternoon. Um, this is the industry panel, and we have an industry topic that's somewhat interesting. We're supposed to talk about things that are going on right now, trends we're seeing, and things that we'll see 10 years from now. Where are we going? But the reality is that you really can't do that fully. So we started thinking about this thing a little bit and we discussed it. We're going to talk about trends we've been seeing over the last 5 years and what we see the next 5 years ahead. It's a little bit harder to go 10 years out for all of us. I'm going to go ahead and let the panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to go by last name first. So I'm doing alphabetical order. So the first one up would be Nathan Frazier. Nathan, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Nathan Frazier. I'm with Nucor, which is the largest steel company in the United States. We got about 200 facilities over 40 plus states. I've been with the company for 22 years, and I currently sit in the great city of Louisville, Kentucky, and work in one of our downstream product plants that makes electrical conduit. My background, just real briefly, I started with Nucor 22 years ago as an engineer, studying metallurgy and in a quality role. And then at some point in my career, moved over into operations and then in leadership positions for about the last decade.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for joining us today, Nathan. Ken Jurgensmeyer. Ken, it's all yours.
Okay, my name is Ken Jurgensmeyer. I'm the Director of Manufacturing Operations in Tampa, Florida. We produce truss plates and railroad in-tie plates for cross ties. And we have a 14 press operation. We stamp out around 90 million pounds of steel a year. Nucor is one of our suppliers for the steel. And I started out in the industry about 35 years ago, basically as a drafter. Then moved up through engineering and then eventually into manufacturing. So I've been in manufacturing for about close to 20 years now and been running this facility here for about 10 years. So it's been quite a challenge because of what's going on with the COVID, and we're going to be talking about that. So it'll be some interesting conversations.
Absolutely, we're in a different world than we were just a year ago. And I will also, Kevin, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Kevin Nolan, I'm also in Louisville, Kentucky. Seems like the center of the world today, so that's always nice. I'm with G Appliances, where we manufacture, hopefully everyone has them in their home. We make washers, refrigerators, all major appliances. Just got into small appliances. I've been with what was GE. It would have been about 30 years. We're now part of the High Air Company. And I started as a design engineer, done both design, manufacturing type roles before coming to CEO.
That's excellent, Kevin. And my name is Victor Brown. I'm a distinguished engineer at IBM. My background is I'm an electronics technology graduate from Norfolk State University. Been working in technology for 33 years total. And as I look back, I've changed so much. I've gone through many different phases. First, I was pure electronics. Then I started writing software. Then I started doing hardware design. Then I started going back into software again. Then I started leading teams. And I think if you talk, one of the things we want to make sure the students understand out of this is reinvention is what it's going to take for you to move forward. And you can't get too stuck on what you do today. It's all about what you're going to do tomorrow. So thank you all for joining. And I'm going to just ask the panelists one by one I'm gonna do first, when I first start, you know, I go through each one of you, and I got 5 questions, pretty basic ones. And the first one is, what manufacturing trends have you seen as game changing over the last 5 years? And I'll just start it the same way. I do it backwards from the way we introduced. So Kevin, give me an idea of what you're thinking. And then looking forward, what trends are you seeing coming?
You know, I'd say the game changer, and it's nothing new, which is, I guess, a little bit sad, but is lean. You know, it's one, I think a lot of companies dabble in lean or they talk about lean, but I don't think we've really gotten to the heart of, you know, using lean as truly a competitive tool. And I would say in the last 5 years have really made big strides moving forward from a lean standpoint. And I think it applies to all areas. And, you know, a lot of people look at it as a manufacturing productivity tool. And what I think our transformation, we're starting to look at, you know, how do you transform an enterprise with lean? So it's another one. I think it gets to exactly what you're saying, Victor, is these skills and stuff, as you develop them, you can take them into places you don't ever realize they can go. And what started here was a few manufacturing engineers getting interested in lean. I'd say it's probably the most profound change that we've had impact our company.
Wow, that's great to know. And looking forward, anything you can see on the horizon?
You know, I think the horizon is, you know, a lot of what are the tools and the things we use. Like I'm a huge fan of metrology. And, you know, if you look at the area of metrology has changed a lot when you get to 3D scanning and I'm seeing again, like that technology really transforming all the way to how we engineer, how do we talk to suppliers and how we work with manufacturers. So this whole thing of having a true digital thread and understand it and how to work with it, I think is going to have a lot of changes, but it's causing all of us to reskill. Because if you're still using a CMM, you're probably not up to date on what the tools are that you should be using. And I think that people also don't understand metrology drives industry. And I think us understanding what's the latest and greatest in metrology can really fundamentally give you an advantage. And if others have better metrology than you, watch out. And so I see that, you know, people all talk about robotics, but a lot of it is behind all of this is metrology. And I think, and that's what I also don't see, that we're getting the kind of students in education, people understanding the power of that is what I've been real interested in lately.
That's good to know. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Ken, same question. What manufacturing are you seeing as game changers over the last 5 years? Because everybody's in different industries. We're going to see different trends.
Well, in our industry, we do a lot of weight. So 90 million pounds, you're moving a lot of product in a very short period of time. So it is how do you handle this weight and how do you handle it efficiently? So in our world, we're trying to focus more on automation and be able to get to robotics and to basically take away the lifting requirements from our job descriptions. But one of the things that we have as an issue is that hiring practices are very difficult right now, specifically when you have a low unemployment rate. So with our requirements, we leave out a lot of the population because we cannot have the requirement is to lift 50 pounds frequently. And so we have to put robotics in place so we can be able to hire folks who are not able to do that and on a consistent basis, because it happens all day long. So we're moving towards more automation so we can open up the field of employment to a lot more people. So that's one trend that we see a lot, and that's how we're moving towards. Another trend that we focus a lot on is the data scientist, the data analysis that needs to be going on. In the past, we do a lot of, I call it shooting from the hip, tribal knowledge, best ideas type of thing versus really what does the data tell you? And we're doing a lot more data analysis because the data doesn't change. The data doesn't have preferences. Data is the data, and then you make decisions from the data. So that's a big trend that we're moving towards as well. And then another one is that we look at our vendors as partnerships and not necessarily vendors as someone who we can beat up on price and that's the best we can get from them. if they have ideas and brings up we want them to bring up ideas and be able to bring in new processes so we can be more effective and more efficient and more competitive. So our role with the vendors is for them to coordinate those activities and have them empower them to come up with these ideas and incorporate them into our operation. And we've been pretty successful with that. So a lot more partnerships and a lot more data, and of course a lot more automation. I see the trends moving forward.
Excellent, excellent. That's great. Nathan, talk to me. What are you seeing? What trends have been seen as game changers those last 5 years, and then looking forward, what do you see coming up?
Yeah, great comments by Kevin and Ken, and I think I'll just kind of add to it in the similar ballpark. You know, I don't remember exactly when, but years ago, I remember being at an event talking to students. It was a little bit of a mixer for recruitment, and I was talking to a young lady and asked what her major was, and she said megatronics, and I kind of just nodded my head, and I stepped over to the side and I got my phone out and I Googled megatronics to figure out what the heck megatronics even was. You know, flash forward a number of years later, and that's something that I see more and more of, you know, and you know, a lot of the things we talk about, similar to what Ken said, you know, on the shop floor level, we're looking at, you know, a lot of automation, a lot of robotics, you know, different AI projects and everything. But really from an educational standpoint, you know, having those students that understand and can tie those mechanical systems, electrical systems, computer systems, and kind of the overarching software and the control system for the whole thing, it's a lot, you know, and I see more and more of a need for that. You know, students that are well versed in that mechatronics field that kind of covers all those different things. Because yeah, the same things he was talking about. We've got AI projects, automation projects, and that's a kind of a sought after thing I'm seeing more and more of when we go to our recruiting events. One other comment on that, it wasn't touched on, but I'll add to that. You know, kind of what drives some of that. In addition to the lean, you know, piece, you know, being in the industry for 22 years, I've also continue to see an evolution on the safety front. You know, in the 90s, you know, you look at the incident rate in the 90s, and we were in the teens as a country in manufacturing. So in other words, for 100 people, you know, 15 people were going to have serious incidents that year. You know, stitches, broken bones, things like that. You know, in the industry, manufacturing across this country has been able to drive that down to around 3, you know, in the last 30 years. And it continues to drive and get better. So a lot of these projects, you know, with manufacturing and everything, in addition to being, you know, part of being business savvy, it's also, you know, from a moral right thing to do standpoint, helping keep our team safe and time. And a lot of that, instead of people using their limbs to do tasks, having a robot do it is a lot safer. And that person then it's not to replace people. A lot of times, you know, we don't have all robots out running the plant. You still have folks that are still monitoring the robots, but they're just not sticking their hands in there to do it. So.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And since I have you, and because I'm gonna start from the top and start heading back down this time, then next time I'll pull Ken in first for the next question. But since I have you, what skill sets are you currently not seeing that you would like to see schools focus upon when they're coming out of school? I mean, you hit it a little bit already. So since you're already on that roll, I figured it'd be good to start the question with you. I
appreciate that. I'll add to that, but not in the technical sense. I think in the technical sense, you know, well-versed and, you know, some of those fields are good. From a soft skills sense, I'm going to talk a little bit, you know, as we move more to technology, you know, some basic communication skills, you know, standing up, giving a great presentation, interacting with operators out on the shop floor. You know, those things, because we all rely more and more on computer screens nowadays, you know, I think we've got to continue to remember to have that skill set as well. You know, being involved in things on campus, organizations, Toastmasters, take leadership positions, things that give you the opportunity to use that part of your skill set is very important, and we can't lose sight of that. And just to kind of a little bit further into that is leadership presence. I mean, especially when you look at organizations like we've got on this call, when we go out and we're finding people, engineers and technical talent for the manufacturing sector, you know, we're hoping we're hiring our next vice president, our next CEO. And so additionally to the technical side of the job is, you know, put yourself in opportunities to get experience in a leadership presence standpoint and being able to move up into the ranks. I mean, people that might be listening to this call might be running our companies one day. So.
Well, we hope so.
We hope so. We need to be developing that skill set as well. Absolutely.
That's true. Well, thank you very much. Ken, same question. What skill sets that you aren't currently seeing that you would like to see?
Well, I will echo what Nathan's saying when it comes to the need for safety. There seems to be, there's quite of improvement that we've done in safety over the years, but there's still more that we can do. And with the cost of hospitalization, the cost of medical, we got to keep focusing on that. So it's surprising to me how, even in today's world, how many times we hire people into our operation that has very little idea what safety really means, and be able to participate in creating a safe environment. And so that is a very critical aspect going forward. So therefore, we got to manage costs and medical the benefits that we have. It just keeps getting out of control. So we got to manage that by improving on the area of safety. Another item that I would like to see more so in the analysis of engineers coming through is basically diagnostic analysis. Now, Nathan said that there's quite a few different types of engineering when it comes to automation. And that's true, because you're dealing with all kinds of different things, from pneumatics to hydraulics to electrical. And so putting all that together into figure out what the puzzle is and then be able to come up with a solution to it has been somewhat elusive to, let's say, a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, but an overall rounded engineer who can handle all those different areas is really more attractive as a potential employee, because they can take all those different skills and apply it into one solving of a problem. So I think that's a good trend there. If you can get more of a blending of different disciplines or various different engineering areas, would be fantastic. And also in the area of communication skills, I had an engineer one time tell me who's been in the business for over 50 years and actually knew Willis Carrier. He said that it takes as an engineer, you're a 5% engineer and 95% salesman. So to get your idea across, you have to communicate and articulate what you're trying to say and be able to present it in a way that everybody else can understand it. So that process is very important in the overall aspect of how an engineer needs to function and be able to communicate, whether it's communicating the idea to higher up or communicating to the guy who's out on the press line. So it's very much important to have that skill to be able to speak to different people at different levels. So that skill is very important in an operation, as well as for their career development as well.
Excellent. That's excellent. Thank you so much, Ken. All of these things are so true. Kevin, how about you? What skill sets that you aren't currently seeing coming out of these students that are coming in new? Kevin, you might be muted.
Yeah.
Not might be, I was muted. So I would say on a positive side of what I am seeing, I'm seeing the students we're getting now incredibly smart. I just think of, the knowledge that they're coming in with. I look back at what I came out of school with versus these kids. It's impressive. And just the way, and I think it's accessibility of knowledge is just right there. And these kids know how to go out. If they don't know it, they can go find it, right? So I'm seeing a resourcefulness and mastery of finding knowledge and finding answers that is super impressive. What I think a big issue is attention to detail. What we deal with is details. Details matter. And I think, people, they don't, that's one of the things, when information is so easy, they don't realize some of this stuff is difficult, and you got to check, and you got to, little things, thousandths of an inch matter. And for example, one of the things we do with entry-level engineers is we have training courses. One of the courses is to build toolbox out of sheet metal. And these kids think, well, that's just simple. I've got the drawing, it looks easy. Okay, go make the toolbox. And just yesterday, I think we had 25 of them. I looked at the 25 toolboxes. They didn't know I was looking at them. But I'd give 2 of them would be a toolbox I wouldn't mind using. And the rest, they're crooked, they're loose, and so what seems to be something simple that should have been able to do, I made a toolbox in 9th grade shop class. These kids have never had shop class. They've never actually had to make something. So I think we have a lot of people that know what a book looks like, But do you have engineers that understand when they put something on a drawing, here's what that tolerance means. Here's what the cost they're going to drive. Here's how difficult it is. If you don't date them something properly, what happens? And I think, if you're material selection, it's these details that can make or break a company. And I think people don't understand that that's what's important. And that goes throughout your career when you're managing a program. If the vendor is going to be 2 days late, it matters, right? And so having these people understand that they have to be able to dive down into details, and then you can come up into the big picture. So I see more big picture thinking, but an inability to get down really deep as we get into real technical issues.
Got it. That makes sense. All right. Thanks a lot. Kevin, since I got you, I'm gonna hit you this because I know this is affecting everybody. But my next question really is around the pandemic. How has the pandemic affected the way you operate and hire?
It's been a nightmare. I mean, that's I guess the one word for it. Appliance industry is interesting. If anyone's tried to buy an appliance lately, good luck.
Yeah, I've seen it. I need a refrigerator. Yes, I won't see it until February.
So the demand has just been incredible as people are being at home. We saw a lot of this, with their connected data, et cetera. We kind of knew it was coming, but we had a perfect storm. It's a demand curve like we've never seen, but then the industry, as far as having folks be able to be on the shop floor and get the job done, has been a real challenge. What we've, as a company, we've really been respectful because people have issues. People have children, they have family members. So there's reasons why people need to stay home. And that's true with the salary workforce, and that's true with the production workforce. So we've been very much on, number one, we need to keep everybody safe. But what happened is we probably were missing it many times 40–50% of the workforce. But our demand was, 40–50% higher what we're used to do. So it's been tough. We've been very good about making sure we got a safe environment for people to work. But for most of the summer, we had all of us out there on the shop floor building stuff. That to me was fascinating because, myself going out there and we're hand in hand. I'm, the team leader is now my boss. I'm not the CEO of the company anymore. I got to put, I was building washers and I did a good job on building the washers I made. But all of us, whether you were in legal, you were anywhere, we were out there building, making sure we can serve our customers. So I think we've risen to the occasion, and it did some really interesting things for us because all of a sudden engineers don't look, before if you're an engineer and you need, I put one screw in, well, you might as well put 3 in because it's going to make it even better. When they had to drive those screws, they're really questioning, like, what am I doing? So it gave us a true appreciation where value is created, right? And so that's the other thing. I think if it really grounded us as a company of what is a company about, where do we create value? And our production associates, all of a sudden, I think everyone looks at them totally different because they're what pay, that pay us all. That's where we generate through, that's where the transformation, we get steel from Nucor, but then that steel gets turned into a washing machine. And that transformation is what makes us as a company, and respecting and understanding those folks. So, COVID's been interesting for us. It's a time where we all got to be apart, but it's funny, as a company, it finally brought us together. And it's made us interact like we've never had to interact before.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You don't really think about it. When you are forced to do something, you do find out who comes to the top and who jumps in and who doesn't. You really learn a lot about your corporation in something like this.
Yeah, and I've learned I've gotten a little older as I was out there. So I didn't like that part of it.
I know what you mean. Ken, same question. How has the pandemic affected the way you operate?
Well, it's affected, if it has affected it, whether in our hiring practices, it's affected it in our attendance, and in a lot of ways our output. Some of the issues that we've run across, specifically when the stimulus package went out, we've had quite a few issues associated with hiring people, just because of the dollar rate that we were paying, and then now all of a sudden realize that we're not really competitive with the stimulus package versus the competitive nature in the area. And as well as with the industry that's going very strong here, and that's the housing industry in the Tampa area. So there's a lot of the folks are wanting to move over into the housing industry because it's booming right now. So we have to reassess our pay rates and look at our costs and how we cut costs elsewhere to be able to still maintain our margins and focus on bringing people in that are willing to work for what we're paying them for. And so that's one thing that's been an issue. The other thing is that we have, and since we're an unconditioned facility in Tampa, you can imagine it's over 100 degrees sometimes out there in our facility, but we require them to wear masks, and wearing masks has become problematic because you're constantly in the heat, and so it's hard to communicate when you have 14 presses running in the background, stamping out all the product we make. So it is, so therefore when you're communicating and trying to communicate what the issue may be, whether it's a mechanic to talking to the operator, we have to actually get away from the facility and be able to, or away from the actual location where the work is, move into more of a quieter room to be able to discuss the issues. But you have to bring some sort of video along where you can see it, and therefore they can see it a little bit better what it was, and trying to explain it. So that's been an issue. And then plus, because of the absences that has occurred, we've had a few people that did get diagnosed with COVID. And so when that happens, we end up with more excessive overtime. So our costs are increasing in labor rates, and therefore we have to do a lot more cross-training. I would tend to say, as Kevin was saying, about how you become much more of what you need to know about how to run a business. So you have to do a lot more cross-training across various different job functions so we can keep production going. And you move people around very quickly in that regard. So it's been a challenge. It's been, as Kevin, I agree with Kevin, it's a nightmare in a lot of ways. But it certainly makes you improve your management skills. Let's say that.
Yeah, I can imagine. But you're gonna end up with a more skilled workforce when you finish as well, because they know how to fill in for each other. So it makes sense.
It does. It's certainly there is, on the plus side, there is value in having all that cross training going on, and they'll be able to be much more nimble as a company, and therefore will be much more effective overall.
Sure. Well, thank you, Ken. Nathan, same question. How's the pandemic affected the way you operate?
Yeah, thanks. I feel like I'm playing bingo. I got some note cards, and as Ken and Kevin are talking, I'm marking stuff off my cards. So it's redundant. So
that's why I'm trying to jump around, because
no, you did great. I'll be brief because they covered all the good things without don't want to be redundant. Few things. Yeah, I'd say on the communication front, we're having the same challenges they are, and on the communication front, it's just not the same being on a video chat or being, on a phone call as it is being in person, having a meeting room. So we really missed that kind of camaraderie and that teamwork you get from everybody holed up in a room and getting on the whiteboard, especially, engineers, we love a whiteboard, especially not having to be able to do that today is a challenge. And another thing I'll reiterate what Ken said on the fee in the plant, when you've got a bunch of, especially professionals potentially working from home, because we have more of an opportunity as a professional setting sometimes to work from home versus working on the shop floor. But yeah, you're trying to diagnose a problem and a guy's got a phone out there, you're trying to hold it up and show you the cylinder and what it's doing. It's just not the same. And additionally, tying back to something that Kevin said earlier is focus. It's easy to get distracted on these calls. I mean, you're instead of being in a meeting, you're on, your camera's off, you got email popping up in the corner of your computer screen. And we've had, mistakes made and things happen. And it goes back to just not having the level of focus that we would have if we were in a room holding each other accountable to pay attention and interact with each other. So just a few things to add to what those guys shared. Sure.
So this time I'm going to ask this one to Ken first, because everybody else is at the top and the bottom. He's caught in the middle. So Ken, just a question. What are your biggest manufacturing challenges that you see coming up in the years ahead?
Well, I see coming up at least in our side of the business here, is that as we get more economically stronger by bringing in offshore manufacturing, bringing it onto onshore, we're going to be fighting for manufacturing personnel more so than we are today. I mean, our biggest competitor when it comes to personnel is the housing industry. But as we move more stuff onshore, I believe we're going to have more of an issue of locating quality manufacturing people. Therefore, and that's including engineers as well as, because as you open up more facilities, more engineers will be involved in other facilities. So that's going to be an issue of hiring people. Plus, there's also hiring people in regards to automation and diagnostics and data scientists and type of group of people, and going through and understanding the data. That's going to be an issue coming forth with us. So that's going to be the driver, I think, for us in a lot of ways. Steel is not so much an issue, which is like almost 95% of our cost is associated with steel, because we're getting more product when it comes in from domestic than we were international. So I think that's going to be it. Primarily the hiring practices and getting associates in here and continue keeping up with the demand.
Okay, all right, thank you. And Nathan, same question. You know, what are the biggest manufacturing challenges you see coming up in the years ahead?
Yeah, the first one I wrote down on my list echoes Ken on the talent piece, is just people, just talented people that want to work in manufacturing. And manufacturing is different. I mean, our plants, you know, most of our plants are not air conditioned either, so they're hot in the summer and cold in the winter. And it's part of working sometimes in a manufacturing plant, and continuing to excite people coming out of high school, coming out of college to want to do that is a challenge sometimes. And I tell you, I've been involved in recruiting out of college for a long time with our company, and I've got 95% of the time you give somebody a few weeks in a plant, they love it. They just don't know what they don't know, you know, coming out of school if they've never had that opportunity. So it's just getting them in the door and kind of seeing what we're about, and then they really develop a passion for it. And you'll find a lot of people in manufacturing that are in manufacturing their whole work careers, you know, 20, 30, 40 years. It's very common once you get in there, because it's a dynamic, exciting work environment to be in. The other piece challenges for us is, and this is, I'll tread lightly here, but it's just the playing field from a trade and a regulation standpoint. You know, you picture yourself, you know, making strategic decisions for a company, and every time, you know, by the time you get your plan put in place, the playing field changes. And then you modify the plan, and then the playing field changes again and again and again and again. And it's just, you know, it's been exhausting at times. So seeing where, you know, US, China, other countries, you know, climate change, all those things kind of come home to roost in the fact of you develop your strategy around, you know, that board you're playing on. So we continue to see challenges as not only the US, but I think the world tries to figure out what we all want to commit to, you know, as a planet moving forward with some of this stuff. We have great, brilliant people all over this planet. We will figure it out, but committing to a common direction is tough. So once we can do that, the sky's the limit for us.
That makes sense. That makes so much sense. Kevin, same question. What are the biggest manufacturing challenges that you see in the years ahead coming up?
So Nathan, I know what you mean, right? Going last isn't as easy.
Yeah.
But, you know, I echo a lot of that. I think it gets to people. You know, that's what I think, you know, us being able to attract and get the skill set. You know, there's skills, automation, et cetera. But right now we're all fighting for the same talent. You know, and especially like you look at Louisville, the market in Louisville is extremely tight because manufacturing's coming back to the US in a big way. And it will happen. But what we're seeing is, you know, when you talk to kids and the parents talk, I don't think parents are saying, hey, why don't you go into manufacturing? So we have like a lost generation of folks that, you know, when I first joined the company, you know, 30 years ago, I wanted to be a plant manager. I loved manufacturing. That was my dream. And I got told that, hey, it's all going overseas. It's not going to be in America. We're a service economy. So I got involved and I started going over to China very early because I said, well, they're still manufacturing. And I saw it. You know, I was in China, I was in Korea, and seeing all the jobs go over there, and just seeing them leave the States. And that trend is going back. It's coming back. But, you know, are the parents telling, because the first thing is the schools could be good, but we need parents telling kids that's a great career. And I don't think the word is out there yet of, if you really want to have a good, solid career, You know, you can come out of engineering school, technical school, and you're not going to have student debt. Now you come out with a, you know, I had a daughter that she's an English major. Uh, Try to get a job. She's got a PhD in English from U Chicago, a great degree, but what's the job? Now you can come out of a technical school, right away you're earning good money and you're going to make, and I sit down time and time again and just talk through kids and just put on a whiteboard. I agree. I miss whiteboards. You put on there of what the starting salary is, what the career can look like, and you're going to see their eyes light up, and they don't understand that. And so somehow this nation's got to get the word across. These are good careers, or interesting careers. When people get into them, you can flourish, you can succeed. And the other thing, like you said, Victor, is you can reinvent yourself. So you can get in there and you can become anything. I became a CEO from doing technical jobs. I mean, you can do anything. And I've always said, I think of it's kind of like a one-way trap, like a lobster trap almost. As an engineer, I can go anywhere. But if you come out as a political science major, they can never be an engineer. It ain't going to happen. So it's a fundamental discipline and idea that gives you every option out there. What other degrees do that? But that message doesn't get across to these kids.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And Kevin, not only does it not get across to a lot of the kids, they don't even look at it as an option because they're afraid it's too hard. And the reality is that it's not that hard. You just have to, especially when you're doing applied engineering. It all makes just logical sense.
But the other thing, and you talked about it's hot in the factories, we're looking at that too, because, you know, our factories, it gets hot. So we're looking at, you know, how do we control the environment? So I think we also have to deal with the reality, because, you know, you can go into Target and it's air conditioned, or you can come work in our factories in the summer and it'll be 95 degrees, 98 degrees. And so we've got to start making manufacturing, I think, an environment that people are willing to accept. And so some is on us, but then also it's on showing the opportunity.
Sure. So this one I'm gonna give to Ken first, because Ken hasn't been first. So Ken, thanks a lot, Kevin. But Ken, if you had one piece of advice you could give a new hire, what would it be?
Do I only get one piece of advice or I get a couple?
You can get a couple, man. It's 1:37. We got 20 minutes, so go
Okay.
for it. This is really about talking to the students and talking to the faculty. So whatever you want to put out there, go for it.
Well, I think the thing that is what's helped me in my career is to make yourself marketable. As Kevin was saying, you know, he started as an engineer and now he's a CEO, and same with Nathan. You know, you move up through the process, you look for opportunities. So you look at ways to get involved, whether it's through professional organizations or whether it's through the company itself. You continue always have education as a forefront of growing in knowledge of your field, and continue that, look for opportunities, and always get involved. So I'd say involvement makes you more marketable and much more knowledgeable on what you can move and advance into.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Nathan, your turn.
Yeah, so I wrote down say yes to new experiences, which kind of goes to the get involved piece. You know, I always give this advice to young interns and to young students starting out in the industry. I remember myself, you know, 22 years ago coming into Nucor. I grew up in a small farming community in Missouri. I was not the most like first one to raise my hand to volunteer for stuff. In the first few years, I had some great people around me that, you know, kind of kicked me out into the into the volunteering mode. And I got so many great experiences for being on projects, being on safety teams, you know, being on a lean manufacturing team and different things early in my career that just pays so many dividends, both through connections and networking within your company and within the industry, but then also just in knowledge. And so my advice is always don't be afraid when they say, hey, does anybody want to help with that? To be the first one to raise your hand and take many of those opportunities. You know, if it's coming in on a Saturday to watch a trial, raise your hand and do it. You know, take advantage of those opportunities early in your career because those pay dividends down the road.
Absolutely, I agree fully. Kevin, I give you the last word on this one. What one piece of advice will you give a new hire? I think you actually hit it on your last one, which is why I didn't come right back to you.
Yeah, I think the other thing with new hires is I think with all these companies, with all of us, we like sharing knowledge. And I think people don't realize that enough. Just talk to people and go out there and ask questions and be curious. So I think if you get a new hire that's curious, they always do well. And I think, all of us want to pass knowledge on. I don't think people realize that as much. It's nothing better to have a young person, ask the questions. And I think they're always surprised when they get answers and they get help. So I just say be curious. You can go a long way with curiosity.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to add one to this, because one of the things I see a lot when I speak to students is that a lot of times the students are afraid to get out of what we used to call a comfort zone. And the reality is some of the best moves I've made have been into areas that I knew nothing about, and I had to learn it. I was thrown in head first. I had an executive tell me one time, is take the job that nobody wants, because that's the one that'll get you to the top. And a lot of times that's true. You can't be afraid to jump in head first into something you know nothing about. You will learn it. There are people around you that know it. And just like we've heard from the other panelists, people want to share that knowledge. So you just talked about that a few minutes ago, Kevin. I think Ken and Nathan both talked about it. We all want to share. So it's the first time I did it, it was scary, because I knew once I left that job, I couldn't go back to it. But now it's something that I do probably every 5 years of my career. I jump into something different to learn something new. You never stop learning.
Yeah, Nathan, I can just add to that. I think it's perfect. The two jobs that I took, I think were probably the ones that helped me in career the most, were two jobs nobody wanted. I moved to North Carolina because it was out of headquarters. It was at a manufacturing site. No engineer wanted to do it. And then I came over to appliances because there was a job nobody wanted. And that's how I got in this door. So I think those jobs, 100% agree, are ones that really probably have the biggest opportunities. I think it's great advice.
Yeah, and if it's in the toilet, it can't do anything but go up. So, if you take something that's in the toilet, I've done it before. I've taken things that were just destroyed, and I was like, okay, let me rebuild this part of the business. And worst thing that can happen is you stay where you're at. But you're
That's
not
what attracted me. That's what attracted me to the appliance industry.
So I'm gonna open this up to questions. It's at 1:42. I must admit, this is one of the most fun sessions I've ever had at any of the ATMAE meetings. To have this much talent in one place is amazing. So I want everybody out there to take advantage of the fact that you have probably well over 100 years of experience sitting right in front of you, and ask questions, because you might not get this opportunity that much. Take advantage of the fact that you've got people that are general managers, directors of manufacturing, president and CEOs of corporations. You don't get to talk to these people one-on-one every day. So please ask questions. I'm gonna open the floor. Unmute yourself and ask questions. Or if you put it in the chat, I can ask it for you. And if nobody has any questions, then we'll just continue to talk. I got more questions for this team. I've seen some of the things that they're doing, and I've learned a lot today. I'm amazed by some of the things that they've taught.
So I got one for you, Vic. First of all, thank you all very much for doing this. I asked Kevin this question this morning, and now in a panel environment. I'd like to hear your discussion about technology education versus engineering education, because I think I heard, especially from Nathan and from Ken, that your jobs tend to have a little more of a technological bent versus an engineering bent, and ATMAE is about technology and applied engineering. So I'd be curious. Like I said, I asked Kevin this morning. How do your companies, and Kevin, I invite you to answer too, so that the people that didn't hear you this morning can hear it. How do you deal with that? Because there is a difference. There is a difference between technological education and engineering education. So I'd love to hear what you all think about that.
Well, when it comes to engineering versus technology, I mean, we have a need for engineering 4-year degree, even masters as well as doctorates. When it comes to more theoretical design issues that are very complicated, processes that are very complicated. But our main need, and I think going forward, our main need will be in the technological engineering side, you might say. More of the hands-on, how do we fix this thing? Let's get this thing rolling forward. Let's keep moving. And so this, because of the demand on manufacturing, demand on keeping costs to a minimum and getting back into production as soon as possible, engineering may take, an engineering approach may take longer because of the theoretical side of it versus the hands-on needs just to get things back up and running more from a technological side of it. So I think that our goal down the road as a company is going to be focused more towards bringing on more technology-oriented associates than more so than engineering associates.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that statement. I think we have a need for both. I think, Walt, I think for us, it's almost like the holy grails if you could do both. I mean, we have a lot of jobs within our organization that really you can do if you're really good out of even a 2-year program, you know, you can get into that job and be successful. We also recruit, you know, with people with a 4-year job. I mean, for us, you know, if we could give you kind of an ideal candidate, is somebody that has the educational background of like a 4-year, let's just pick mechanical engineering degree, and yet, you know, they rebuilt their car with their grandpa in the barn. You know, they have some hands-on experience, so they can, you know, because you need both. I mean, you need the educational piece, but then you also need the hands-on ability, the troubleshooting piece, the diagnostic piece that these guys were talking about earlier on. So we have a lot of positions that are kind of in the middle ground. It's almost like you need a blend, and we can take people from a technology background and get them there, and we can also take, you know, people from a more of a traditional engineering background and get them there. But it's more about what you do the day after you get hired than it is, you know, coming in. And it's a good question, Kevin.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, you know, what I look at is all of us need to learn throughout your career. You know, Victor, you talked about it. Like your career is going to shift, it's going to change. But what I've kind of grown to over the years, it's a lot easier to take someone that's hands-on and teach them theory to take a theorist and make them hands-on. Like I've spoke out at Stanford before, and I remember they got all annoyed at me because I'm like, I'll take a University of Louisville speed school grad any day over a Stanford engineering grad, because our kids know how to make things. You know, they're coming from farms, they got hands-on experience. So I think in the future, we got to get less on what the degrees are and more on what can they contribute and how can they come. Because I'll take a bet on someone that can get to a Bridgeport and make a part than someone that can sit there and run a bunch of numbers and tell you, because it's much easier to go the other way than to get practical.
No question. And when
I
you
would
get
agree.
out there and start looking at it, you
Hey,
find out that those people come up with really unique viewpoints on how to solve a problem. They'll take a complex problem and break it down into something simple and fix it quickly. I've seen it more times than I can count. I agree with you fully.
Yeah, one thing to add, I know we've got educators on here too in schools, is you know, because, and I give the example with the person that, you know, built something in their barn with their grandfather. I mean, everybody comes from different life experiences, different backgrounds that give them different opportunities. But even from an educational standpoint, from the schools, I mean, the value of labs and the value of a non-traditional classroom setting and doing things is, you can't underestimate that. You know, and I know how I talked to different schools and we recruited different schools, and, you know, people have different philosophies on that. But our company's standpoint is, man, don't kill the labs. You know, do more labs, build labs, and get them out of the classroom and get them to using their hands and applying some of that knowledge.
You know what I always tell people is that you really can't teach experience.
Yeah.
You can teach the theory, you can show them how to do something, but until someone does it themselves, they don't have the experience of executing that task. So you really can't teach experience. So anytime you get an opportunity to do something, I mean, if I'm down at a plant one day, you guys know my background is engineering technology, but I would jump right into the manufacturing side. I would love to do something like that. I've never done it before. Worst case scenario, when I come back out, I learned a new trait. So for all the students, don't be afraid to jump in, and for all of the faculty, encourage it. you'd be surprised what these students can come up with. There's some talented folks out there.
Absolutely.
Any more questions? Because we got 10 minutes and
I've got a question to build on that, if that's okay.
always go.
Yep. So kind of to build on the question that you all just answered, my name is Jake Hildebrandt. I'm from Murray State University, and we've got a degree in electromechanical engineering technology, which is really automation engineering technology. When you all were asked the difference between engineering technology and engineering theoretical, a lot of times people get that confused with 2-year degrees, and I think a couple of you might have said that. How do you all view like a 4-year engineering technology degree, which is we have the theory, but we are definitely more applied than a theoretical engineering program?
You know, I think, Jake, it's all good, right? I mean, and again, I think it's one, we've got to get less pure as, you know, employers of what's the problem we're trying to solve and who has the right ability to solve that problem. And I think a lot of times, and I confess, you know, for years when I was doing the hiring in engineering, I said, well, it's got to be a 4-year engineering degree. And I can't, you know, it really bothers me because I probably overlooked countless people that could have been better for the roles. Because I was, you know, to me, this whole world's going to be about, you know, how do we have diversity and inclusion, right? And that's what you hear everyone talking about. Well, it's in this area too. You know, how can we make sure that we're hiring people that have different viewpoints, different education, and then you can solve a problem in a new and more inventive way. So I think we've got to start as employers understanding what are people learning and then what's the quality of the kids, and stop, you know, being a purist of this is the degree I need, because you don't hire degrees, you hire people, and you hire individuals. And, you know, here in Louisville at the University of Louisville, there's a place, First Build. So anyone that ever comes to Louisville, go down to First Build, open to the public, other than COVID going on. But we're in there doing practical things. We got kids in there making rockets, making go-karts, and we're making appliances all at one time. That's when you really learn people. So I've hired a bunch of kids out of there that I don't even know what degree they have, if they have a degree. But I know they can make things. I know they can solve problems. I know they can do things. That's what's important.
I would add to that as well. I think Kevin hit on a lot of my points. One is that when it comes to open position, if I have to look at what the need is as to how to solve the problem, this person will fit this role better than another person. So if I've got 2 individuals and both of them have, let's say, engineering degrees and a 4-year technical engineering degree, one guy has straight A's, have no work experience. The other guy has B's and C's, but has lots of work experience. I'd be jumping on that guy with B and C any day over top of the A guy, just because he has that experience. As Vic was saying, is this, you can't teach it. You have to get that experience. So the more opportunity that you have as interns or employees in other organizations, take your time going through school if necessary in your life circumstances, you'll gain that experience, be much more valuable, much more marketable in the end run.
Yeah, and just to add, we're absolutely good with it. You know, Jake, the example I gave earlier about the young lady that I met and had to go Google what mechatronics meant, we ended up hiring her. And we've hired several other people out of the same program because we once figured out what it was, and we figured out that they brought a level of talent and kind of, to Kevin's point, kind of filled a gap and looked at things differently than we might have done from a traditional mechanical or electrical sense. We're like, yeah, we want a few more people like that at some other plants. So I think we're definitely open. It's all about solving the problem, and we're open to different things. We might ask some dumb questions along the way trying to figure out what the difference is. So
Good question, Jake.
Any other questions? Feel free to ask. We have about maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, and then I have to jump off because someone else has to jump on. And I might not have anybody behind me, so I could hold it out to 2. But any other questions?
Victor, this is Mark.
Hey, Mark.
I just wanted to, it's kind of not necessarily a question as much as with the folks that we've been talking with, there's one thing that I've noticed over my history, especially in the last place that I worked before retiring, and ultimately, I found a very unique tool that if there's any students on here, they may want to be inquisitive about, is we brought people in, we brought engineers in, whether they be engineering technologists or pure engineers, mostly in chemical and mechanical and nuke engineering. And we actually put them with somebody so that they had a mentor. It helps them get broken in so much faster. But at the same time, the next thing we did, which is maybe a little unusual, we put them with the maintenance department. And they got to go partner with a maintenance mechanic, and just as if they were in an apprenticeship, and go out and learn what the negative side is. Just like Kevin said about the engineer that's out there on the line and says, whoa, wait a minute, why did I have this third screw? Those types of things make a new engineer feel part of the team, and it makes them, from what we have seen, be a much more well-rounded person, as well as getting them acclimated quicker.
Good advice.
Yeah, it is. That is, Mark. Thank you. And it's really important. I think all of us have mentors. There's another thing I want to make sure people understand. You're never going to know it all. So I've got more mentors than I can count. And I have 33 plus years of experience. And I'm mentoring people too that are below me, because you have to pay it forward. So the bottom line is that no one gets to where they are alone. It literally does take a village, but it also takes some effort on your part. So if you want someone to mentor you, or if you want to be a mentor, both of them take effort. You know, it works both ways. It's a two-way street. So for all the students that are on this, make sure that you put the effort in. You schedule the meetings. You make sure it happens. Anybody that ever asked me to mentor them, I make sure that I ask them to schedule it. And when I ask people to be my mentor, I schedule it. I make it as easy as possible for the person that's actually doing most of the work. But I think it's important that people understand that you never stop having mentors. You never stop learning. This session alone, I learned more than I could have learned in probably several years of classes, because I'm talking to people who are doing the real work. And it's just important. It's an important part of it. You need the education, but you need also the experience of others to guide you. Any other questions, comments before everybody I end the meeting?
Victor, I'd just like to make a comment that you're a good moderator. You might have a career in this.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. I really enjoyed it. I really do. I mean, this is personal to me, and I think it's personal to all of us. So thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the time that all of you have taken for this. I know what it takes to take an hour out of your day. It doesn't seem like a lot to most people, but to get this caliber of people on any kind of panel for an hour, you know, it's a lot of money. So thank you all for taking the time to do this. And hopefully we'll continue these discussions. And I would like to thank everybody who's part of this today. Does anybody else have any comments or anything? Thanks a lot, Kevin. I appreciate that comment.